what do we do with Muslims who claim to be maybe queer, but recognize that it's wrong and identify as Muslims, but openly maybe have this struggle versus obviously people who are claiming or calling for adoption and an acceptance of the practice, right? How do we as Muslims maybe navigate those waters? And this is just a thing that I've been asking myself. And
current times right now.
Current times, you know what I mean? How do we manage to speak about these?
It's interesting, and it's not easy, it's difficult.
Right.
So the thing is, you raise two different types of people.
Right, exactly. Yes.
So there is one thing where you do something that you recognize to be wrong, morally. Because we have to make a distinction between legality and morality.
Correct.
Just because something is legal, it doesn't make it moral.
Yeah.
So schools should be teaching, they teach legality. This is what is allowed in our society. But they shouldn't be teaching morality, because that comes from your view of the world and how we are as, we're Muslims. Someone could be a Christian or a Jew, they would have different views on morality. Or you could be an atheist, and your morality is whatever the society deems to be okay, you follow that. So in terms of the person who accepts that what I'm doing is immoral, whatever that action is, and they're struggling with this, then this is really between them and Allah, as long as it's private.
Yeah, not advertising it.
Not advertising it. So if you're, and we could take that for any sin, alcoholism, whatever you're talking about, porn addictions and anything, it doesn't change. Even with this sort of LGBTQ thing, if that's your personal struggle and you're struggling, and I've met two Muslims who were, they had homosexual tendencies, and one of them was, able to sort of control that desire, be sort of leading what we would consider to be a normal Islamic life. And I met another Muslim who's not able to control it. And I was quite surprised, because after years of interacting with them, I saw them in this, and I was like, I'm very surprised to see you like this. And what they said was very profound for me.
You mean you knew them before?
I worked with them. I worked with them.
Or were they always out the closet?
They were never out of the closet.
Okay, interesting.
So,
interesting.
In fact, very devout, reminding me to pray, telling me where the local masjid is, lots of positive things.
We get this in Pakistan, bro.
And then I saw the person who was, then I saw them happen to be dressed in a certain way, and I thought, surprised to see you like this. And they explained the situation. And I said, and my question was, how do you reconcile this with your Islam? That was my first question. And what he said to me was fascinating. He said, look, I'm not saying that this is right. And what he meant was morally right. This is something I struggle with, and I pray to Allah that He forgives me. Now, in that situation, what more do I want? What more do I want? So that's a different thing. I would, as long as this is not public and in the sense that he's sort of promoting this, and I would have no issue with that at all. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm saying it's between him and Allah. When it comes to people who say we need to change Islam, that's a different thing entirely. Because what you're saying is that I'm a better judge of what's moral than Allah is. And that's problematic. And probably would, I'm not going to takfir anyone, but probably would have serious implications for your Islam.
100%.
Okay? Now, when it comes to our children, because they're the ones, because we're pretty old, but they're going to face the brunt of this, and they're facing it all the time.
It's what my parents worry about their grandchildren.
Absolutely.
They don't care about themselves.
So in that scenario, I think the key thing here is that our children should know that we don't treat anyone disrespectfully.
Yeah.
We're not harming anyone. We're doing it, but we know who we are and where we stand. And that's something that comes from the home. We have to inculcate this into our children. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean they're not going to have difficulties. I know lots of families who are now homeschooling their children.
Yeah.
I sit down with my kids and we have discussions about this all the time.
Or go backyard, go back home.
Which is probably not a good thing. Because anything that's sort of forced, as soon as you think that everything's fine, but actually it's like a wound spring. As soon as there's a bit of freedom, they will. And I've seen this when I was at university. You see the kids who suddenly there's no parental oversight and they just go crazy. And it's because it's been forced on them. It wasn't internalized. They didn't believe it. And that is our fault. If we're doing that to our kids, where as soon as there's a bit of freedom, they're off on the wrong tangent, then we've not done the right thing by them. May Allah make us good parents. May Allah protect our children from the fitna. But it's not an easy thing to navigate. But the question I would like to, I've not really had many conversations about this, but I think the way to go about the conversation is the first question should be, when you're having a conversation along these lines with someone who has an opposite view, is, am I allowed to disagree with you?
Interesting.
Or
Set the
express our
foundation.
views on this, because I think it's fair.
Sure.
Our views. Let's say first you're gay, and then you discover Islam.
But before you give your view,
gotta establish
you need to establish the principle.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to disagree with you?
If they say no, then
It's over.
And-
There's no conversation.
No
Because at the moment, what happens is as soon as you speak on this, you're getting cancelled. People are, So if I'm not allowed to disagree with you, then there's no conversation to be had.
That's a great point.
especially
I think I think the LGBT community. I think in Islam we were discussing it. We would accept if you're a Muslim and you believe in Islam, you know this is wrong and this is your own personal struggle. Whereas LGBT, leave that all behind. You're LGBT. There's no religion, and I feel that they've pushed that a lot. They don't push it's like no, forget Islam. It's bad. It's backward. It's whatnot.
Well,
Be with us.
yeah.
Now it's gonna happen. Some children may turn out. Okay,
I mean,
what are
this
you going to do?
is- this is
Are
really
you going to say you can't be Muslim, or you can't be my son, or you can't be
No,
this?
so this is the question for the scholars, is what things take you outside of the religion?
Right.
Okay, and then we're not qualified to say to someone these.
100%.
So the callers need to clarify this, and I think it will be along the lines of whether you regard something to be moral, against Allah's wishes, or not. I think that this is going to be one of the key factors. But this is not a question for us.
Right.
We as a lay people, we cannot go around telling people, oh, you're off the deen, you're off. Because this person may struggle for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, and they may come back.
Yeah. No.
But we may be the person that shuts them out. And you never want to be. So even with this gentleman here, ultimately, I don't want to be the reason for him not to be interested in Islam. If he walks away with a positive, so the sister was very, very stiff, and
Okay.
by the end she was smiling, and she was, and I think it's really important. These things are very important.
I like him.
I agree.
So I know maybe not a direct answer.
No, but
sort
let
of-
me also
yeah.
follow it up, because here's what I'm seeing as well, is that there's a growing impetus for young Muslims
Promoting.
to want to be, I guess for lack of a better term, woke and supportive of what's becoming
Gay rights.
secularly acceptable, okay? Now, is there a space for us to, let me lay it down this way, is there a space for us as Muslims to be able to support up to a degree before we get canceled by our own religion? For example, what do I mean by that? I mean, can we stand arm in arm on the basic principles that we as humans are afforded human rights, the right to living, the right to, make your own living, the right to housing, the right basic human rights, but stop at, I don't accept this practice. I see young Muslims struggling. How can we support them without being discriminated against? But what they end up doing is they take everything and saying it's all acceptable, and we should be accepting
Support
everything.
who? Support
The great LGBTQ community.
So
This is what I find young Muslims struggling with, is they want to see an equality in at least this is what I'm assuming and I'm hoping is the case of why there's such an adoption from young Muslims to want to embrace the LGBTQ community, is that they see them as human beings, but where they err is that they end up saying, okay, we see them as human beings, and who are we to judge on what they're doing? Let's accept them for who they are. I'm saying I think it should be, we accept them as human beings. They should have human rights. They should be able to exist.
But
Should be able to be, we don't adopt and accept the act. We say we disagree with it.
What would you do to someone who's drinking alcohol?
Same thing. I accept you as a human being, but if you ask me, I disagree with I personally
Would
don't
you
think
would you
it's
call
correct.
them away from the alcohol?
Yes, I would. Yeah.
The same with zina.
Yeah.
Of course.
Same as in
Especially if they're Muslim.
Great point.
Especially if they're
Great
Muslim.
point.
Yeah.
Especially like if I don't know you and I don't have a basis to, it wouldn't be what I would start my foot
where
off
do
with,
where
you
do
know?
our rights come from?
Allah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So we don't just take the rights of the secular idea
For
of
sure.
rights,
Yeah.
For sure.
because that comes from liberalism.
Sure.
Now they've got a religious foundation for this, in that they've taken things like equality and these things
Sure.
from religion, because
Sure.
there's nothing in nature that makes you think we're equal. We're different heights, different ages, different weights,
We agree.
different intellects. We're all different.
Yes.
So there's nothing equal about us.
Sure.
Allah says that the only thing that differentiates us ultimately, we're all human beings, is our piety. Is how conscious of Him we are.
We're all equal about piety.
Absolutely. But that's a religious, theological basis for equality. You won't find that in nature itself because everything we measure is different.
Yeah.
So they take these concepts, but what they do is they say, look, one of the things they do is liberalism, really. They say, look, it's your life, live it, do whatever you want.
Right.
Whatever you want, YOLO, you know, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And the problem with that approach is, where is the barrier? So
Right.
one good way, if you look at the discussions that have been had here about this, is people will give extreme examples of people doing what they want to do, that even that someone from the LGBTQ community would find too much. Like, you know, incest is often brought up,
Yeah, it's just brought up.
or maybe intercourse with someone who's on a completely knocked out, unconscious. They will not remember, feel anything.
Yeah.
But so they have certain lines. The question is, where does your line come from? So our line doesn't come from what we think; it comes from the Creator.
Correct.
And so we would call people to be on the right side of the line.
Society.
But the way you can help people is, if you see someone being mistreated, call out the mistreatment. Don't let people be mistreated. But you can say, look, I don't agree with people being harmful to you, but I don't agree with what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You have to make that. So it's about being confident in your own
100%.
position, and allowing there to be justice in the sense that people can't be unjustly treated. And also remember, we're in a secular society. We cannot impose our things on other people, but we need to have firm foundations for our youth, so they know where they're going. This is gonna. I'll be honest with you. In my view, this is imploding. Because this is imploding. You can't even. I mean, homosexuality is at risk from this, because if there was, imagine this, you have two men. One is they're both homosexual. They find the opposite sex attractive, but one identifies as a female. Is the other man now no longer homosexual?
Yeah, correct.
Because you are actually a woman.
Gender-wise.
It removes things like any idea of gender, and women are getting trampled,
Yes.
especially in the transgender world. They're getting trampled, and so women is eating yourself, and we're getting to the stage where trying to apply this practically is falling down. So you could get somebody who came in, you know, my pronoun is this, to your school or whatever. Next day they could change their pronoun. In the middle of the conversation, in between each word, I could change my pronoun. And every time you speak to me, I say, you're offending me because you're not using the right pronoun. And I could give you a new pronoun. I could give you a list, like this is a random pronoun generator that I believe in. Every moment that it changes, please change the way you address me because I'm feeling different. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So let me say something, because I agree that, so obviously we agree on everything, but what's astounding to me is the fact, for it to implode means that there needs to be some backbone of morality on the society for it to implode upon. What I'm seeing, especially in the United States, is the bankruptcy of morality. Therefore, it's
a fight
thriving.
over words.
It's
a fight over
thriving.
words there.
But what I mean to say is, like right now, children are being allowed to make decisions on their own gender in terms of medical decisions within the United States and in Canada, right? Children, you know, at young age, sub-teens in some cases, are able to start like the hormone blocking. Some can even do gender reassignment. I'm just astounded at how massively adopted it continues to be and is just continuing to thrive. I wonder...
Is it propaganda or is it natural that you think this is happening? Sorry.
Well, the rates are meant to be about 1.2% roughly in the population. That's the idea. But actually, if you look at what we're seeing is that people tend to have these identification issues in clusters around friends.
Yes.
So there seems to be a social element to that. There's also a greater preponderance of this in terms of if you're on the autistic spectrum. There's lots of other things that are involved in this.
100%.
I think one of the problems is that we're mislabeling normal feelings. So when you have a child who's a little bit upset or confused about something, we're giving them an option in terms of an explanation for their feeling that wouldn't have been there before. that they probably take without realizing the full implication of it because they're a child.
Is this like the case of, sometimes guys like the little kids, they dress up as a girl and they play with their
I mean, that's
and then now they want to do is push that as to, oh, they've got gender dysphoria, or I've had cousins who dressed up as the bride, were just playing with kids. We don't encourage it, but you see it as little kids, right? Are they push? I feel like sometimes they're pushing that, or a girl wants to be a tomboy and they want to push it into, yes, you can become a boy.
So it's complicated why the phenomena is like this. I think there's a lot of push everywhere. I mean, it's really being put into our faces a lot. But I think the moral bankruptcy is in pockets. On the whole, people have a sound moral basis. So if you went out of the cities,
it's in the young generation that's morally bankrupt. And so to your point, you said 1%, maybe about 1%.
Yeah.
Studies just came out. 5% of teens identify as transgender. So it's growing within the young generation who are growingly morally bankrupt because of things I personally think, like social media, TikTok, that are propagating things, distractions from us to understand what is reality and what's not. Are you aware, and this is something that I just came across and understood, is that there's a term now for the young generation, for people who are normal. It's like we're normies. Like you and I, we're normies because we don't have some defect or something wrong with us, right? But we may think like the old generation. You see what I'm saying? No, like if you think anti-LGBT or woke, you're not, or if you don't have some sort of disability, you're a normie. You know what I mean? So it becomes now uncool to be, mainstream, or to be like normative, or to be, what is.
It's gone that far.
It's gone that far, and so that's why I'm more concerned with the moral bankruptcy, because then your point I agree with. If we didn't have this surge in just like jahiliya, you know what I mean, just like complete ignorance, or like not understanding what is true.
But surges happen you get surges within surges. So now we're seeing a lot of trans regret. People who are coming out saying they wish they hadn't done this.
Like surgery,
after, hopefully before that, but a lot of people after surgery as well, who are detransitioning.
Right.
Now, that surge is also there. It's being dampened down. That voice is not being allowed out. But you're going to see this rising, and I think what will happen is, my hope is that the society will come to their senses at some stage.
It's an elastic band. Like
Elastic
react,
absolutely,
right?
yeah. That's what my hope is. So for example, I mean, if you're discussing, you could ask somebody, look, because we're getting trans-able people.
That was another thing.
Yeah, trans-able. So you get people who identify as disabled.
Yeah.
And so they want to have the wheelchair, and
or they want to cut off a limb.
But imagine that if someone
what
says,
is the number? I've heard this, but is it true?
Well, there have been reports of people. We're getting trans species, people who are different species, people identifying dogs, transageism. So it's taking the idea that whatever you think is not only real, but other people have to accept it as real. Now the problem is, other people have to accept it as real. That's the problem. So if somebody comes along and they want, say, identify as a person with one arm,
their own microcosm in their own reality, it's up to them.
It's no problem. It's up to you. But when you start imposing that upon the society at large, there has to be some sort of pushback. Now, at the moment, this is being thought through, but I think ultimately, human beings, we give them some credit. I hope so. Inshallah. We have to offer in Allah that people have some. So inshallah, I hope you like this conversation. If you want to hear similar conversations, please check out this video. And otherwise, pray for our sincerity and may Allah accept the work we do for His sake. Assalamu alaikum.